happy dance inside on that. Hi Lynn, how are you? Doing well.
She's had kids for quite a while.
Hello.
Yeah.
Jack, how are you? Where are you? Are you there? This one's me. And I'm here. And that means that's you. It's 574. Love it. Thank you. He made it. I was kind of keeping an eye on it.
Okay, thank you. I lost my board.
I heard you make your comment. It was good to hear all the about 10 minutes in. I heard you make a comment about 10 minutes in that they were
I had my
saying.
pen. What the heck did I do with that?
Need to be thinking US 30, Highway 15, State Road 12, Railroad.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
I'll tell him.
Yeah, and I get it. Let's go. Everybody up here, who we missing?
Cindy went to go back and find some more. There she is.
All right, thank you all. For a little bit of delay here, we'll start the meeting with our invocation. Jeff?
Let's pray. Father, we pause to thank you for this day. I thank you for the opportunity over the past hour and a half to sit down with friends and neighbors and just work through who are we and what do we want to become. Thank you for that. We're so fortunate to have this community that we live in, and we all want to make it better. I ask now that as we look at tonight's agenda, that all of us on the board, sharp minds and humble hearts. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Let the minutes reflect we're all present tonight. And with that, we'll go into the approval of the minutes from the May 1st meeting, which were presented in your board pack.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll second it.
All right, further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, great, thank you. I'd like to welcome all our visitors. For those of you joining in on our streaming service, we started at 5:30
with a community visioning session with the Hyatt Palma Group, and we're going to actually continue that here for about 20 minutes. Before we do that, I just wanted to thank everybody for their participation and welcome you all here tonight. So with that, Dolores and Doyle, why don't you just pick up?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank all you guys too for coming to the session. For us, it's extremely important, not only that you hear just as we do what you citizens want, but that you have the final word. That's why we've asked you to meet with you directly after, and that's why we asked you to come as well. Mayor, did they get all the questions that we were going to ask? We only have three very simple questions for them. Were they distributed to them?
Yes.
They're very easy. And we won't be here longer than 20 minutes. We know you got a heavy agenda. But was there anything that stood out to you tonight that folks said that you really want to underscore? Anything that came out of your constituents per se?
I think one of the messages that maybe I got that several people mentioned is trying to develop some type of continuity amongst the downtown merchants. We may still not opt to stay open the same hours, but we work together toward a common theme, a common goal, and everything, and also in promoting ourselves. I know I've had a business for 13 years, and I'm still finding people who didn't know I was there despite what advertising I do. So somehow we've got to get that word out.
Okay. Any other comments? Anything that really stood out to you as being special? Let's put it that way.
I think the discussion of arts, culture, and diversity was not something we heard 20 years ago. And I think that's a testimony to where we're at now, that those things are important to this community.
Okay. Is there anything that you would take issue with? Anything you heard tonight that you disagree?
May I add one more just to your
Yeah, go
first
ahead.
one?
Yeah.
I think the desire of the community to have gathering spaces, that they want the downtown to be a place where people gather and feel comfortable and want to be here.
Any others? Okay, the second question, anything that you disagree with that you heard tonight? Anything that kind of is off the chart or something you want to take issue with? Okay. And was there anything that wasn't mentioned tonight that should have been mentioned?
I think one of the things that I hear over and over, not just because I have a service dog, is that our community is not dog friendly. And when I go to other communities, they have bowls of water out in front of the businesses. You know, they're welcome. There are pet stations around the downtown area so that you can clean up after your pet, that kind of thing. And if we want to encourage more living downtown, then we need to make those kinds of amenities, I think, available.
Are your businesses pet friendly now?
No?
Kind of piggybacking off of that too, Diane, because I'm in a position where I see people that walk their dogs downtown and let them do their business
Yeah,
in the
don't
planters
take
and so forth, but do not clean up after their animals. So I don't know whether if we had bags and so forth around, that would make a difference. I don't know.
I mean, I always think a responsible owner has their bags with them, but it's not true. So, yeah.
Anything else, folks, while we're here with you tonight?
One thing, just moving back to number two, and I can't say that this is really an issue per se. I mean, we heard a lot about wanting live music and so forth downtown, but as also being a business owner and a resident, you have to temper just a little bit to be respectful to the folks that are living downtown. I mean, you don't want to have music blaring till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. So definitely, I'm all in for having it as long as we have some parameters for that.
Okay, well, I know you got a heavy agenda, Mayor, and we'll let you go. Thank you again for coming tonight, and thank you again for having the opportunity to serve you. It's been a delight for us. When we got the call from the mayor, we were just jumping all over the place thinking how great it would be to come back and see you.
Doyle, do you want to just give a little a highlight of how you're going to finish the week out? The press is here and would like to know the process. And
let me say before I do that, too, if you think it's you in the middle of the night or whatever, you want us to know something that you didn't have to feel like comfortable saying. The same goes with you as with your constituents. Just hit us with an email or let the mayor know and he'll get the information to us. As Dolores said, this is our first public meeting. We met with the mayor today. He took us around to show us the things that had changed. But this is, very important on the first day. We took time, yes, we got here yesterday, and we took a good bit of time, quiet time, while you didn't know who we were, to look around and see things for ourselves, unfiltered, so to speak. We got a meeting tomorrow with a group of business people that actually, when the mayor called us, we didn't tell you this, but we only serve communities that we have served. We don't solicit business anymore as a firm. And we asked the mayor, and when he asked for a proposal, and we asked him to give us the opportunity to talk with some people in the community that might have the ability to implement anything that came out of this process. So he did. And I think maybe there are 9 people, maybe not even 9 people, but we're meeting with them tomorrow. We have a work session with them for the afternoon. And then we're off and running for the rest of the week. If you remember how we operated before, we try to decide and figure out what it is we want to do while we're here, because we want to talk to you about it before we leave and start putting pen to paper. So for the balance of the 2 days, that will be Wednesday and Thursday, we'll have to be roaming. You'll probably see us out in the streets and businesses, but we actually develop our strategies based on what we see and feel and what you told us you wanted. Friday, we've got an exit meeting in the afternoon. We'll meet with the same group. We used to call it a process committee. It's really a steering committee now, the 9 people that I mentioned, or 9 or so. We'll meet with them again and lay out to them what our strategy at that point would be. See what their opinion is, if you want to add anything to it, take anything away, and then we're off and running. We'll leave here, we'll write the document, and we'll send it back to you as expediently as possible. Right now, we're thinking in terms of probably mid-June at the earliest, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But we'll have something. We want to get back to you while it's still warm. We don't want to let it get cold. That's very important in the momentum of the project like this.
Let me say too, because I don't want anybody to feel left out, but this group that we're meeting with tomorrow, it's like the head of KEDCO, the head of the chamber, the head of Main Street, the mayor.
Commissioner, downtown developers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll reiterate again, we wanted to talk with people independently on our own that would have the ability to implement whatever came out of this. And that's kind of the way we described this. And we talked to those folks even before we gave them the proposal, just to make sure we're all on the same page. We don't want to plan anything that's not going to get done. So we just wanted some assurance that that would be the case.
Yeah, and I know I mentioned it. In 2001, I'd just gotten on the council, and we were able to get involved in this process. And the document that came out of it, I didn't realize how powerful and how long-lasting this document was going to be. It became a guide for me as we worked through all of our concerns downtown. We're always going to have parking issues. We had parking issues, we have parking issues, and we will have parking issues. But there are ways to go about it, and, that's just one example of, what we learned when, especially critical time for downtowns back in the late 90s and early 2000s when large stores were taking a lot of the downtown mom and pop businesses out of the downtown. I think post-pandemic is a different scene now. And I just asked Hyatt Pullman to come back and look at what we've done, not so much gauge whether we did it or not, but, we've got the tools, we've got the foundation, and where do we go from here, 2.0? And that's really what we're looking to find out. And I was overwhelmed by the number of folks that showed up tonight. Heard some great ideas, and gosh, I'm really excited about where we're heading. So
We feel real good about it. We're off and running now. This jazzes us as well. Citizens come in and share with us like they have.
Yep. Any final comments from y'all? That I know most of y'all were here. I think you're all here tonight, so appreciate that. And they got some work to do. So I told them there's some nice restaurants downtown to go spend some money
We're
on.
going to go spend some money. Thanks again.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you get your briefcase.
All right. Other reports, oral and written. Lynn, I know you presented the fund report. Any comments?
No, I don't have any comments on it.
All right, and then we've got our Comcast franchise fee for the first quarter, $13,240.52. All right, any comments on either of those? All right, let's jump into unfinished business. I know last month we started a discussion about realigning our non-for-profit funding. I know this is a discussion that we've had ongoing. I met with several of you. We had a good public discussion last month. I know things are tight budget-wise. Things are very tight, and I think making a decision, setting a direction for future funding is important. I'll remind you that the focus of 2024 budget has been presented, and tonight we're here to discuss if there's any concerns you had with that. I thought it best to keep that flexible so that every year that maybe those funding focus and priorities can change. But I thought it was important that we sit down and have this discussion publicly. And I know you've had a chance to talk and listen to constituents. I think we've got some folks here that want to address this as well. And we'll certainly do that. But before, so I just want to give you all a chance to have a little discussion about how you're feeling about that. And I guess if you felt like there's any need to change any of funding priorities for 2024. Evidently not. All right. Well, come on up.
Joe Pachkowski.
Hi, Joe.
City resident, so I'm going to say first, I applaud your efforts to reevaluate the parameters, because as a taxpayer, I don't want to see our valuable dollars be spent on the wrong thing either. Now I'm going to put on my hat as the CCAC board member. So in my research of this topic, I'm going to thank the media for bringing it to light, because I didn't see it on the minutes, and I didn't see that meeting was streamed on the 1st. So here's the concern and what I'm asking you to consider. You're looking at changing it today, adopting it for June 1st. So the 11 groups that, let's say we've gotten used to the money, that's just a natural reaction. That doesn't give us a lot of time to implement a new strategy for our budgets to make up those funds. And as you look at the list, which amounted to $125,000 last year, some as small as $3,000, but each budget for each not-for-profit, that can have a huge impact. And so for us, it's $20,000. That's huge. And the people I've spoken with, because I have talked to some other not-for-profits, they weren't aware of this. I think it's a shame, I'm going to say, that the 11 people weren't notified of this so that we could have some dialogue about it. But here's what I'm respectfully requesting, that instead of implementing this as of June 1st, can it wait till next year so that we have a chance to make some budgetary changes? If we have to come up with extra money, and I can say for all the groups, to put together a new fundraising activity, that takes time. And if we're already counting on this money, and I think all the causes are good, just asking for that extra benefit. Because we weren't aware you were thinking about this. I mean, if there would have been a clue, we could have already been planning. But do you see what I'm saying? It's going to be a shock.
Okay. Questions? I will say that one way we had to try and step this down a bit was one-time ARPA funding for non-for-profits this year. And we're actually going to have a little bit of discussion, not specifically about this, but that was one way we had of a one-time ARPA gift. We have, or grant, if you will, that we have not had a chance to finalize how we're going to do it. But the discussion was that Those funds were clearly available for not-for-profits, especially those that have had some difficulties climbing out of the hole that the pandemic created. And that will be part of the ongoing discussion as we work through this, the implementation of this. But council are the ones that allocate the funds. We've had plenty of discussions, but I would ask them to answer these questions and those concerns that you've raised, if they feel comfortable doing that now. If not, we'll take your suggestions to heart and try and make this work out. We don't want to pull the rug out from anybody.
One thing I just want to clarify from your question, you said something about June 1st?
As I understand it and read it, you're looking at it today for implementation as of June 1st. The applications are due June 30th.
So my understanding, if you're funded for 2023, you're going to be funded for 2023.
Correct.
It's just you won't,
This is for the 2024 budget.
this is for the 2024 budget.
I understand.
So it's May.
See, there, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you can say there's a lot of lead time, but when you're dealing with, if you have to come up with the fundraising activity and the planning and all of that, I understand. I know what you're saying. I'm just asking for a consideration.
I just didn't understand the June 1st thing.
I had a few discussions with some of my fellow councilmen, specifically about the CCAC, because I was concerned about it. And thought perhaps my concerns had been alleviated when I read in the paper that the Kosciuszko County Convention and Visitors Bureau had upped their contribution to the CCAC, which...
Visitors Commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would have made up what we would have done.
It's one way of looking at that. May I also say here, it is called the City-County Athletic Complex, and the city appoints 2 people. The second sentence, you're going to bring that up. I wasn't going to get into some of this, but the mission statement for the CCAC, started by Jeff Plank, that the city held the lease, until a couple years ago when they bought the property. But the reality is it was always meant to be an economic resource for the city, and it is. The Bureau will tell you that 80 to 85% of the hotel rooms rented during the summer are because of the CCAC. So that means people are spending their money here for restaurants and gas, or spending the weekend. So it is more than just a sports complex for the 1,000 kids, just kids that come to the programs. It doesn't include all the people that come in on weekends from several states around here, very far away, some of them, for the tournaments. So it's not just for youth. And if we're the community, I don't know what, it used to be Live, Work, Play, and now it's Live, Work, Explore. I don't know when that happened. But anyway, but for the children of this community, a lot of them are off the street learning good things from their mentors, leadership, character building, and we certainly want to keep it going. And it's aging. It's been there now since 1990. It needs some repairs. So we can only do so much with the gate receipts. I'm a big person for user fees. So I think anybody that plays there should pay there. But, we have reached a stage now where there's some plumbing things that, have been there since the beginning, and we need some help. And I'd hate to see this community lose all of that for the kids and the economy. And I still think it's city-county. The benefit, I think, was more to the city than it is for the county. I didn't mean to leave that guilt on you. You brought it up, so I answered. Sorry.
Appreciate the last hour and a half. I'm a part of the CCAC board, oddly enough, as well.
Appointed by the city.
Appointed by the city, actually. I find it a little left-hand, right-hand. The last hour and a half, we've spoke about how do we have better outreach to the communities around us. The CCAC, we have our flaws. Don't get me wrong. It's an old facility. It hasn't been updated. We're trying our butt off. youth sports are not the most profitable thing in the world. I own a restaurant on the side. Margins are easy to make, you know? Youth sports are difficult. Like, you're not going after only the top tier wealth. You're going after everybody that wants to play a sport. Finances are difficult. But if we lose this as a community, you're losing what this seat back here was just pleading from the 20-year report that we're asking to do again, which is something for kids to do. We should not be looking at removing funds from this. We should go, if I looked at you right now and I said, listen, there's a failing children's facility for sports, but it exists, would you take it over and would you run with it, or would you bulldoze it? The answer is you take it and run with it because it's already there. Why are we having one conversation where we go, we need to create reasons and experiences, and then we're having another conversation where we go, but not that one? That doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why we pull funding from that. And I'm not saying that like all of our ducks are in a row and we're perfect. Not at all. Mike is working his butt off. But if you talk to the kids that are involved out there, it means so much to them. Now, we got a lot of like stars and things that we could shoot for. I know there's other communities that have similar programs like Kendallville, and some of them are elegant as all heck. My staff has kids that play in the sports, and they'll pay $500 like individually to go play at these facilities, and they're gorgeous. They're first-rate facilities. You're right, we don't have that yet. But it is the question of the chicken or the egg, like which one are we gonna do? But I don't know why you'd walk away from it, especially when on the other side we're going, how do we make improvements? You've got an opportunity here. Lean into it. Don't lean away from it.
Some 250,000 people went through the gate last year. So we have a lot of folks that they come for that. It's a weekend activity, so they're here all weekend. And that's why we don't want to see that end. And I'm just going to throw in, so last year there was the possibility that the Y would merge. I'm sure you all heard of that. The reason we didn't want to go that way, I'm going to read this sentence to you. This is why we didn't. This is the purpose of the bylaws. The CCAC was formed to provide various recreational needs and promote wholesome family sporting activities for children and their families within Kosciuszko County for generations to come. The CCAC was also formed to create, promote, and attract various out-of-county sporting events which will bring in out-of-county visitors and will generate an economic impact to Kosciuszko County. Two-sentence purpose, and one of them is, to support the community. So that's why we did not, as we evaluated the YMCA option, they couldn't promise that those tournaments were going to continue. And so the thought was, this is why we were formed, so we can't just be absorbed by them, lose the $1 million of land that's there, and not continue to bring people to this town. Because as the saying goes, what is it? If you come, then you'll stay. And so every opportunity for every one of those 250 people, 1,000 people that come to town, is a chance that they're going to stay. So I didn't mean for this to go into CCAC. I was just asking for your consideration of not. You do? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done. He's on it.
I'll introduce myself as Mike Hagee, the Executive Director at the CCAC. I've met some of you, and I've tried to make my way through the community as I took over about 16 months ago for Carl Swihart, who was out here for about 14 to 16 years. I will say this. I know we provide for the weekend events. That is 60 to 7% of the innkeeper's tax income. So you mentioned we get 20,000 extra from them. We pay into that. To me, we're getting pennies on the dollar from them. As much money as we bring into them, we're getting pennies. But what I have done in my mission, as I've talked to everybody and have spoken to everybody, done interviews, I want to be community driven. We've added this year, we've partnered with Warsaw Little League. We've created a new girls fast pitch league for Warsaw. We've created a new boys baseball league this year for the city of Warsaw. We may sit county, but we provide for city. We do have programs. We provide soccer leagues. We have 400 kids in our summer soccer league. We have a fall soccer league. City. We definitely do our part to provide and contribute to be a part of the city. I know where we sit, but we're just barely outside. My goal is to be a place where Kosciuszko County residents have a place to go. We've created 2 years in a row, the last 2 years I've been there, Easter egg hunt, 400 kids. We've done trick or treats, provided for the city, 400, 500 kids. We are trying to be a bigger part of the city and the county. I just think, like you said, 20,000, that seems like a lot. But if you look at our budget and the repairs that are needed, the things that we have to do to fix, that 20,000 is substantial. It's huge. So I just ask you guys to reconsider and think about it, because we are a city-county complex. We provide for not just county, but city, and we do appreciate your funding, but to lose it is substantial. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mike.
I have a question, and this is for information. So when I first came on the council in 2010, it was my understanding that the city's sponsorship was gradually going to decrease because the goal of the CCAC was to become financially sustainable. And I'm hearing that maybe that's not a realistic goal, at least in the near future. And I just want to clarify, because I know that's one of the things that's been in the back of my mind. And especially when you then bought the property and we had no more control over it. And last year, the possibility of all the money we'd invested in the years going out the window as it was sold to another entity, those are things that have affected my thinking. So I would just like to know what direction you're heading towards, or I guess we need to know, is that even a possibility way you're going, or are you not thinking that will ever happen and that we should always continue to invest? Because I think that's important for us to know. Yeah.
I'll do my part, and then Brandon Kefeber, our board president, can expound on it, because I'm relatively new. I can't answer to comments that were made before. I will say this, as I've been there 16 months, we're constantly uncovering Band-Aids that they use to fix. As Jason had mentioned, we're an old park. We have so many projects that we're uncovering that are falling apart, that we have to fix to sustain our business. I think the idea of self-sustainment would be ideal, and I would love to get to that point. But I don't think, as we uncover problems that were patchwork, that we can afford to lose help from other outside sources to help us get to where we need to be to become self-sustained. Okay. We're just not to that point. We are a worn out place. I mean, we need several things that we are taking care of on ourselves as we're getting better at funding ourselves, but that takes away from the bottom line that we still need help for.
Just to back up Diane too, that was kind of always my understanding when I came on the council too, that we were going to work slowly to kind of wean the funding down and have the CCAC become more self-supporting.
And I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm Brandon Kefeber, the board president. I have been board president 3 years total, I guess. And I've been on for 9 years, I guess it is. Is that right? I can't remember. Anyway, it has been talked about being self-sufficient. But as Mike said, there are many things that need to be, fixed, updated. It has been patched, and it's unfortunate that we are finding some of these things, with the age of the park, and it's just coming to fruition. Our multi-sport complex, we got some beautiful flooring in there for everybody to work and do pickleball tournaments, things like that. And then we find that when it rains a certain way, it leaks. So, it's just the roof leaks. So it seems like we take a couple steps forward and we'll take a couple steps back. So we are trying to get to that point. but it's just, it's not right away right now. And that's why I think we're trying to come to you as a, you know, as asking of, you know, something that
Well,
everybody can help
And
out.
another, I think, thing for us is like, I think we might, and I'm just going to speak for myself, I guess, I don't want to speak for everybody else, although I've talked to some of you, be more interested in funding some capital projects if we knew that it was going to go to that instead of funding
Okay,
staff
Yep.
or.
absolutely, absolutely.
And we've not been able to get that from the CCAC board before.
Okay.
We've not been
That's-
able to get a budget, we've not been able to have any idea how the money is spent.
Okay.
We've not had any, and I'm not trying to micromanage you. You know, I want you guys to do your own job, but if I'm spending taxpayers' money, I want it to be in something that they would see and
Yeah,
that they could
absolutely.
use and that was more tangible. That seems to me like more the role of the city, because we have a Parks Department.
Sure.
But in our Parks Department, we cannot do everything, and you guys are providing a supplemental, you know, I mean, we took out all of our soccer fields that were all over the town everywhere.
Right.
As I was on the board of KCSL at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and we moved them all into one place so that parents could be out there and they could watch all their kids play soccer instead of having to run from Kelly Park to Jefferson School to, you know,
Correct.
so, I mean, we did all of that, but I think that, and, you know, to speak to the mayor's idea then of looking at some of that ARPA funding where we could give you maybe even a more sizable contribution if we knew what it was going to go for, and if we
Correct.
had some kind of guarantee that it wasn't supplementing your operating expenses, but it
That's
was
great.
actually getting you to the place where your facilities were upgraded so that you could bring in more and, you know, not have to worry about this every year because you were
Right.
self-sustaining.
Right.
And
So-
that's just my opinion, but that's, you know,
Well,
So-
this was not an easy decision to pivot. But, you know, we've all had budget issues, and looking post-pandemically, the inflation and the wages going up, and we've got the same issues you all have,
Sure.
and we're just trying to do what's best.
Yeah, and I think if we would be able to provide that for you, I really didn't know that was something that we could do every year for you, that if the city council would want that, that's great, we'd have no problem with that. We also did a 1-3-5 goal setting of what we wanted to actually, you know, improve in the next 3 years, and the next 5 years. So that's all done as well, so we can share some of that stuff with you, so, thank you very much.
And I just want to finish answering your question. So one of the reasons the property was bought from LRC was because some of the funding, if they applied for a grant, the grant maker would say, but it's not your property, so we don't want to give you money for new bleachers because it's
understand
not.
that, yeah.
So that was the important element there to get that property in the CCAC's name.
yeah, and I don't know that we disagreed with that, but it was just at that point
Yes.
we lost any control. I don't want to say it like we wanted to micromanage you, but we lost our stake in it at that point. You know, you became the same as a Y or a Baker Youth Club or a, you know, it changed. So
I
even though
think the
name
important
is-
thing is that there are certainly non-for-profits that aren't going to fit into the categories that we've been discussing for next year.
Right.
We know they all have compelling stories. This is not easy to sit up here and make these kinds of decisions. We kind of went back to areas that specific services that are provided for the city in contract form that we cannot provide ourselves, that we decided to utilize those funds for. It's not easy, and we will certainly take your consideration tonight, your discussion, and not only in the discussion of the nonprofit funding, but potentially the ARPA funding as well. So, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for your time.
Jason, thank you. Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, everybody, for
Mike,
for
thanks.
your
Thanks, Joe.
contributions in the last years, and we appreciate all of it. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thank you.
Thank you, and I will say, Big Ten basketball, nice to meet you, sir.
You like sports, good. Okay.
All right. Any final comments before we move on to new business? Okay. All right, so the first item, this isn't actually going to talk about how we're going to spend our ARPA dollars. I'm just bringing another project for your approval. It's already been allocated, but I wanted Dustin to come up and talk a little bit about the $500,000 that we've put in for neighborhood infrastructure improvements. He wants to get going on some of these projects, and as I promised you, we would not spend that money, even though it's allocated, until you've had a chance to finalize how this is going to work. Just one other note, Lynn did a great job with the Department of Treasury listing the projects that we have done to this point and getting those projects officially recognized as ARPA projects. And as we move ahead with this process, we've got more of that reporting to do next March. So, Dustin.
Sure, thank you. Actually, it was very good to hear the conversations that happened just in the meeting prior, because it did seem like there was a lot of concern with sidewalks and connectability and things of that nature. So a lot of this is something that Mayor and I have had several discussions. City engineer and I have had several discussions on. We have a lot of sidewalks that need improvement. Some are going to need some engineering and some things of that nature. So we have a list of those that we're battling now. Our goal in-house this year is to hit the 6,000 linear feet mark of replacement with inside the street department. But these funds are going to go for the contractors, some bigger areas, some lot longer spans, a lot bigger projects. So part of it is the walking schools. A lot of those areas where kids are walking, there's a lot of travel. Some of the older parts of town that sidewalks aren't up to ADA standards or the right widths and stuff like that too. So a lot of this money is set aside to make some drastic improvements in our sidewalk situations.
And we're looking primarily at neighborhood improvements. I think I spoke to all of you about if you've got spots in your district where there are concerns and gaps, that's what this money is for. And I think we've set aside $250,000 for this year and $250,000 for next year to really beef that up.
And we started, many council members recall, reached out to all of you as far as what areas in your district had concerns and stuff with that, about a year ago. So these have been laid out kind of and planned. It's not like we just threw darts at a map. I mean, these have been, strategically planned with what's going on. I actually met with Mark Vick with the transportation department from the schools and stuff to make sure our neighborhoods are safe and where our kids and youth and activities are heading.
Okay.
So you're requesting to use the ARPA funding in order to get the contractors in place to get some of that work done?
Right. Some of this is going to be used for engineering. There's going to be some survey work and things of that nature that Aaron can probably compound on a little bit more on some of these, but a lot of it is these are going to be contracted work. We're going to bring contractors in to replace a lot of these sidewalks on top of the 6,000 feet
what you would
that
already
we're
be
doing
doing as a
in-house.
street department.
Sure.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And just to make sure, that's in addition to what we normally do. We can't possibly ask Dustin and his group to do all this. They don't have the capacity to do it. So we set this money aside, we've had the discussions, and I just wanted to make sure that you were all good with this tonight. Again, it's already been allocated. I think there was $500,000 allocated this year, but we've discussed that we would use half of that this year and then half of it next year. Any comments? I suppose I just asked for a thumbs up from you all. Okay, all right, very good. All right, thank you. So Lynn, there's the next project to put on the Department of Treasury report.
Is that going to be number 6 or 7?
And with regards to the ARPA funding discussion, we had set aside, I believe, $250,000 for non-for-profits in those that have been impacted by COVID negatively. And that was a category we set up when those funds first came in. We wanted to get our house in order with our non-for-profit funding And then, again, the idea was to potentially utilize some of that to help step down with a one-time gift, or grant. And we will have further discussions about that. But those buckets don't need to be spent till the end of 2024. Actually, excuse me, they need to be voted on like we did tonight by the end of 2024. They can actually not need to be spent till the end of 2026. So there's plenty of time to consider projects and funding requests as we develop that a little bit stronger, how we're going to handle that. So, all right, with that, Jeremy, you've been very patient, young man. I know you've got a big job here with the northern and southern residential TIF districts. I know you went to the school corporation and got their approval for this, so with that, I'll let you solicit the council for Resolution 2023-0504.
Yeah, so it's taken a little bit of time. We started this back in November of last year. We went through a couple of different processes, the redevelopment commission, the plan commission. The city council did see this a little bit earlier when they approved an economic development area, which was part of the regulation to create residential TIFs or expand residential TIFs. My understanding is that state law has changed again, so it won't be anymore. But at the time that we did this, it was required to do that. So the council did that back in 2022 with a lot of conversations and discussions with the school. We were able to work out or come to an agreement on how this will contribute to them. So they did approve their resolution, I think, last month. So this is your resolution, which approves the Plan Commission order that was done back in 2022. And then this will go before the Redevelopment Commission for a final approval, which will expand those two districts. The big thing would be the maps, and I know that they can be a little hard to read, but in essence, the south one is just bringing in Park Ridge. The new will be the third phase of Park Ridge, which we annexed, I think, last year or the year before that. And then, so that's the only addition to that southern residential TIF. The northern residential TIF, we're doing two things. We're actually bringing in some additional land, but we're also removing some. I can find that map, maybe.
So is the blue what was already there and the pink what you want to add on each of them?
So the pink is not, so on the southern one, or the northern one, the pink is not the addition, it's the subtraction.
Okay, because
And
I
then-
was trying to figure out the two maps and the colors.
Yeah, so as that area is developed, we initially included in the residential TIF because there were some apartments up there. But over the last few years, that property was leaning more towards commercial, which wouldn't make any sense to have it in the residential TIF. So we're removing that section from the residential TIF, but adding some sections further along 30 that we annexed in and are trying to get houses built on.
Pink and blue. It's kind of hard to see.
So Jeremy, the areas that we're adding, it's only new development in those areas that will
That's
go
correct,
into
yeah.
this?
Yeah, and it's only residential. Keep in mind, these residential
Okay.
TIFs. So anything commercial or industrial does not get captured.
Okay.
It's only residential. So yeah, this part up here is mostly commercial, but there was a handful of apartments. Not knowing which direction it was going to go, we initially included it in, but given what we were looking at now, it's more likely to be commercial than residential. So we're moving that section and adding this area down here, primarily this 70 acres here that we're working for a single-family housing development.
All right. Questions? I would just comment that we've had good discussions with the schools. The city put some money into Eisenhower Drive, and obviously these residential areas are going to increase connectivity to the schools. There are certainly going to be transportation issues as these neighborhoods develop, and the schools are seeing more kids, which is to great benefit to the school corporation. But I think the city also feels it's important that we handle the infrastructure with regards to sidewalks and bike paths and areas where traffic and safety are a big issue. And certainly we have done that. Jeremy could sit there and list 5 projects we've done, from Husky Trail and 300 North and the Eisenhower. And there's just lots of projects, lots of money that the city has a very, very important responsibility to keep those routes to schools safe. And, part of these funds, these TIF funds, as the timing occurs, are really important and can be used for those issues. Jeremy, any comments on those discussions?
No, I think, like I said, we had a lot of discussions with schools, just understanding their needs and them understanding what we're trying to accomplish. And I think we're going to get there in the end. It's going to take a little bit of time. These residential TIFs are kind of in their infancy. So step 1 is trying to fund those projects that are going to create revenue. Step 2 is taking that revenue and then creating the projects that are going to create future growth. That's the same way we've done with the Northern TIF. It's always a step 1, a step 2. Right now, we're in step 1, incentivizing these projects that create the revenue, and then using that revenue to create infrastructure that creates new development. That's the goal. That infrastructure is going to generally be in the city's or the school's best interest, because it will be road improvements, it will be sidewalks, walkability, safety, traffic safety, implementation. So all those things that will benefit the school as we go about, but it takes a little bit of time to get there. They've only been in place since 2019. They're generating, each one of them is generating under $200,000 a year right now. And we've got $1.5 million sewer project in one district and a couple $100,000 sewer project in another district. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and to my earlier comments, I think we're putting, Jeremy, about $600,000 in a Lincoln school sidewalk project, which is coming up finally. So again, we certainly remain committed to the safety, our role with the infrastructure and safety for those going to school. So other questions? I know, Jeremy, you need this resolution passed tonight so that you can take it on to the redevelopment commission.
That's correct.
Yep. Questions?
I move to approve Resolution 2023-0504, which will expand the northern and southern residential TIF districts.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Michael. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, Jeremy, you've got a list of abatement compliance forms, CF1s. 'Tis the season. I think what I'll have you do is go down through all of them, and then if there are any in particular that you would rather single out and act on, we can do it that way. If not, we'll take a vote on all these when we get down to the end.
Okay, so the first one on the list is Chico Met. This was approved back in 2015, which at the time was Symmetry Medical. So they submitted their personal and real property tax abatements. And I think they're in their 8th year, so it's my recommendation that we continue with them as well. They've made the personal investment of around $8.8 million. They have not added any new jobs, but like I said, they did make the $8.8 million investment. Second one would be Instrument Machine and Development, TBS. They were granted a tax abatement in 2019 for real and personal property. They have spent around $1.2 million in personal property and have spent about $2.9 million in real property to date. This is their 4th year of abatement. Third one is Little Crow Lofts. This was specifically just personal property or real property. So it was just the expenditure of money. This is a housing project, and part of the HCDA housing requirements is that the city contribute funds to these projects. This is one of the ways we contribute funds to affordable housing projects. So they have spent the $8.4 million investment in that project, and it's in its 6th year of abatement. Fourth one is also an affordable housing project, 802 Center. It was just recently completed. It was roughly 13.7 million, 72 unit senior housing project, affordable housing. So this is in their second year of, and this would be, I think, their first year of full assessment, assuming they received full assessment in 2023. Fifth one, Enterprise Drive BTC investment. This was also just a real property investment. Didn't have any jobs necessarily tied to it. They were expanding 12,000 square foot, added $525,000 in project value, and that they're in their third year. Flexos has a number of them, and if you look at the bottom of this page, I kind of try to break it out because it goes all the way back to 2011, and they had abatement in 2013 and 2017 as well. I think the big thing to understand is they made the personal and real property investments that they said they would, and if you look at from 2013 to 2017, they've added about 243 total employees, which far exceeds the amount that they estimated they would add in those abatements. So for all those, which includes the 1510 Armstrong, the 602 Leiter, the 1605 West Center Street, and 1510 and 602, so all those, they've made the investment and they've hired the employees that they indicated they would.
So for those that are in their 10th year, is this the final year then for them?
Not necessarily, because some of it's personal property, and that personal property may be acquired over like a 3 or 4 year period, so some of that would have been assessed that second year, some would be assessed the third, some would be assessed the fourth. So some of them may go beyond the 10 years, but it starts to pare down the amount of equipment that's eligible. So those are the Flexos ones. Then on to Capitol Drive, Wishbone Medical. This is a real property. They spent about $106,000 refurbishing an existing facility and have hired 66 employees, so they exceeded their number of employees that they said they would hire, and they're in their second year. The Lake City Highway, AGM, this was the, what's the new commercial? Rural King. So this was the Rural King investment. They took that building and put money into it, roughly $1.4 million in refurbishing that. It's strictly a real property abatement. We don't typically do those for commercial, but in this case, we created an EDA for it and granted the tax abatement.
Jeremy, is this,
and it's a
dinosaur
vacant.
buildings, is it a 3-year?
It's a 3 year, so it's a
Yeah.
vacant building tax abatement, so it would be for 3 years. This would be their first year, and they would have 2 years after that. And they're getting the full assessment on that vacant building because it's through the vacant building and plus any additions, but after that 3 years, then it would roll off.
Jeremy, is there a requirement to hire? I know they have. Was that part of it? I just want to learn. Is there?
It was more about the investment than the employees because a lot of them may be full-time or some of them may be part-time employees, so it's not the same as like an industry. It was really about it being a vacant building, them making the investment in that vacant building, and then getting that 3-year abatement off the vacant building. We've done this a few times. There's been a few vacant building deductions that we've done. This is one of them. And then on the West Hill, 1445, there's two different entities. So you have the Patrick Industry side, and then you have the West Hill side. The Patrick Industry would be for personal property, and then the West Hill would be for real property in those investments that they've made. So, and there's two different, so you might see it a couple times on here. That's why I'm saying that. So there's two different additions to that as well. So they had the initial shell building. So this was our first shell building that we built. The initial shell building was a little over 60,000 square feet, and then they added another 60,000 square feet, which is why you see the two different abatements. They have obviously hired the number of employees and made the investment, so certainly no issue in granting them abatement. The first one is in its 8th year of abatement, and the second one would be in its 4th year due to that addition being added on at a later date. 1295 is Banner Medical. So this was the first new building that was built out there outside of the Shell building. They spent around $4 million in personal property and hired 40 new employees. So certainly they're in compliance with their abatement, and they're in their 7th year. The other section of that is the West Hill investment, which is purely real estate. So the Banner Medical would be personal property, West Hill would be real estate. Roughly 5.1 million in improvements to real property, and obviously they have the employees that Banner has hired. So that is also in its 7th year. 1195 is Next Remedies building. So this is real property abatement for them. They had roughly a 55,000 square foot building, 8.3 million in investment, and then obviously Next Remedy has a number of employees, but this would have been the real property portion of that tax abatement. 2525, so this is the 3rd ICDA housing project we've done in the last 6-7 years now. So this is a new one that's being built where Arnold stood. So this is purely just a real estate tax abatement for improvements to real property. So 8.7 million is what they're investing. It is not done, but it'll be kind of a first year of abatement, so it'll probably be partially assessed because some of the building was up at the beginning of 2023, so it'll be a partial assessment, but and that assessment will carry on for an additional year to get their full abatement. But so they've certainly made their investment as well.
All right. So again, just understanding the different types of abatement, Jeremy's talked pretty well about them being personal property, their business personal property, being the actual real estate, and then these vacant buildings, which have a different set of rules. So we had pretty much all 3 of those types of abatement that are being considered tonight. Do y'all have any questions about any of those in particular? Excuse me. All right. Well, with that, excuse me.
I'd move to approve the abatements.
All right, Jerry, thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thanks, Josh. Any further discussion?
Jeremy, thanks for your hard work here.
Yes, thank you.
All in
Appreciate it.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.
No problem. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'll give you a little statistic. We had 3 hotels built in the last 5 years. Those 3 hotels pay roughly real close to $300,000 in property taxes a year. Those hotels are being filled by the CCAC. That's why they built them. So just keep that in mind. So when you say self-sufficient can have a lot of different meanings. They bring a lot of revenue into the city, not just in innkeeper's tax, but also in taxes that those hotels pay.
Jeremy, it's not often you make editorial comments, but
Joe got to you. Yeah, Joe got
all right.
Jeremy, that not including the jobs, I was adding up all the millions here, 73.5 million in investment. Now, I'm just on the calculator going down the list, and I know there's a lot of moving parts here, but that's not the jobs, that's not the people, that's just 73.5 is what I came up with. Okay. Yep.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. Any other matters come before the council? Any visitors' comments or questions? Jason?
Is there, oh, sorry.
You're on TV.
Is there, as far as going back to the CCAC conversation, is there potentially an environment or a world that we don't know about, that we should be looking at, that maybe we could ask for those funds from a different department or a different portion of government in some capacity? Like, is there something that we don't know what not to ask or what to ask? Does that make sense? So if for some reason the way that we're going about those funds currently it is no longer applicable, which makes sense, we have to make choices. Is there another route that maybe we could request those funds to come from with a different justification, not the justification that we're a non-for-profit, but maybe a justification that we're beneficial to the community or, whatever it might be. I'm just asking what I don't know.
You're putting me on the spot, but you're talking more of an economic development benefit than a recreational benefit, and that could potentially open up different avenues of funding. I couldn't say right now within the city, but, we'd have to sit down and look at that. But there could be economic development benefits that may be available from the state or other local buckets of money that would fund and support. I mean, I know that Convention and Visitors Commission is the direct benefactor of what you guys do, and to me, that's the most obvious. I know, as Joe mentioned, Mayor Plank many years ago, in his work to try and move the softball fields from down at Center Lake, create the Central Park, move it out. I know there was a lot of back and forth with the county at the time. That was many, many years ago. I know the city has picked up, I think, because of his leadership at the time. But over time, I think Diane articulated it well. We thought that, at some point, this is going to become sustainable. And we're not here making any judgments. We want the CCAC to survive and continue on. We're just changing a little bit our focus in our non-for-profit world. And we've got wonderful non-for-profits in this community that provide a lot of different services for our community. And it's very difficult to turn any of them down. We just know we have limited resources, and I think it comes down to prioritization. And those are some of the discussions we can continue internally, and we will.
No, very respectfully, we appreciate it. I was just curious.
All right.
I have one last thought. I was just mentioned by Nick Hauk a minute ago that I should just bring this to the attention.
Fat and skinny, maybe?
No, it actually pertains to things like fat and skinny. But apparently our state representatives just created something called and I don't know the term, but I believe it has something to do with the term social, exactly. And so, social carry, is that what it's referenced? So just something to maybe put on your radar?
No, we're very well aware of that. We're reviewing that legislation right now. I know I've talked with Rob about designating these refreshment areas. Communities have a pretty good leeway with how they do it. We certainly want to be respectful of the process and try and figure out where these would be most beneficial, not create any public safety issues, but, allow for a little bit less inhibited opportunity to enjoy a libation perhaps during an event. Yeah, no, that I appreciate you bringing that up. We are certainly on our radar, and we're actually looking into it. So, Joe?
Should I assume then we're not making a change on the beginning date of your application?
We're not changing the application, the dates on the new application, but we haven't made any different decisions tonight.
Well, I thought you were going to do that tonight. That's why I was wondering. But the fact we did discuss it, I was assuming that maybe you're just going to leave the status quo. Adopt the new.
It wasn't so much the dates as we were talking about the
I understand.
yeah.
So is that new form?
So it might be better if you come to the mic, because it's live streamed and probably people want to hear what you have to say.
So is the new form going to be adopted tonight? That was your plan as of May 15th, that the new
The way I looked at
qualifications?
it was that we didn't need to adopt anything. The council, by their actions of allocating those funds during the appropriation process, is how they will vote on how they will fund.
Which will be during our budget hearings this summer, if that answers your question better.
Okay. So for us specifically, based on the new parameters you've talked about, we should still go ahead and apply?
If you've seen the application, you'll see that it,
Well, that's it. So the new
It's-
application is taking effect as of June 1st?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
okay. Any other comments, questions? Well, thank you all for hanging in there. It's been, a lot of us have been here since 5:30. Appreciate it. If there's no other comments, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, Jerry, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Jason. All right.
Appreciate it, man.
I'll do it.
Yeah, great, thanks for coming.